Thank you for joining us again on the Sales Ops Effect. And today we are talking about body work. Paula James shares how to end the endless exhaustion of office work, a day job where you're sitting down usually for a very long time. Paula is a movement specialist with 20 plus years experience teaching worldwide, and she teaches practical self-care tips you can implement right away to have less physical pain and have more ability to focus during the day and connecting with others and having the energy left over so that you can actually enjoy your evenings and weekends. This is the Sales Ops Effect, where we drive predictable growth in small to medium-sized businesses. Hi, Paula.
So good to be here with you, Charlene.
Thank you for joining us today. And the very first question that comes to my mind is about self-care in and of itself. So when we think of self-care, it usually means doing your nails or a spa or a massage, something like that. It doesn't usually feel practical, or sometimes it just feels indulgent, just having an ice cream or something like that. So I'd really like to know what your definition is of self-care. What do you mean by it?
That's such a great question to get us started. So I think of self-care in terms of working with the various aspects and parts of yourself in ways that are friendly and supportive, and not in ways that sacrifice or exploit.
Okay. Yeah, please carry on.
Yeah, if we unpack that a little bit, sacrifice might be you have equipment that's not a good height for you. And so then you're sacrificing your comfort, your optimal body performance, rather than making adjustments. And that might or might not involve spending money on equipment. It might or might not involve anybody else needing to help you make changes. But you could just say, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm straining while I work at this, but I'll just keep going. An example of exploiting could be scheduling things so you run up against deadlines and you do a lot of work in panic mode. And so you sort of exploit that dump of stress hormones to make you productive and sacrifice your overall health.
Oh, okay. So what triggered me in a good way there is the word exploit. And I think that is used deliberately and purposefully. And I'm grateful for you for using it, because a lot of times, and I have ADHD as well, when you're in a piece of work or you've got a deadline and you're just pushing through,
Right?
pushing through is something that's rewarded in society. It's expected that you should struggle through, survive, push through. But when you think of it as you're actually exploiting like safety mechanisms or exploiting your body's goodwill.
If you think about exploiting the natural resources of a piece of land, that land is pretty well trashed after you've gone through and flat topped the mountain or extracted whatever you want. And if you think about your team or your own self, and you have pushed yourself into panic mode or overloaded, overburdened, then at the end of the workday, the end of the project, you or your team are trashed. And now you need to recover. Well, why was that work project, workday not set up in a sustainable way so that we're getting work done? And then at the end of the day, you have choices. I'd like to go for a walk. I'd like to have dinner with a friend. I'd like to go play a game with my children, right? So if you reach the end of every workday or most workdays or weeks feeling like you need to recover from work, then your work is not sustainable. You are sort of overspending yourself at work and then trying to catch up and recover in your free time. Well, what kind of quality life is that, right? I overdo it at work, and then I just go sit on the couch and watch something distracting, or I need to go to a spa or a retreat because I'm not available to connect with any friends or family members. I'm not available to cultivate a new hobby for myself. I'm not available to get involved in any community projects and be more part of my neighborhood or my city. I am at work and pushing every other valuable area of my life out into the corners or off the margins, because there's not enough of me to do all of that.
If you have your tokens, and so there's tokens of different aspects of your life, and you have a finite amount of tokens.
Right.
So if every single day, if there's a specific amount of tokens per each area, and you keep taking from your hobbies to go to work, you take from your beauty hobbies, like you're getting your hair done or getting your skin sorted out or something like that for work, seeing your family or your friends, sometimes they're the same people, sometimes they're not, to go to work, then everything else is not being paid for, it's not being fed because you're spending it on work. And I completely get it. In the society that we're in, there's people listening right now just going, well, I need to be working because I'm not making the money that I ought to be making. And I feel for you, and I have been there. And it's ridiculous. Like you said, the way things have been set up.
Right. So there
Yeah.
are things that you might or might not be able to control or make choices about as
Yeah.
far as number of hours or what's on your project list. But what I'm interested in is, how are you showing up physically? How are you taking
Yes.
care of yourself physically while you do that work, so that you're not making things worse, so that you can focus, so that you can get things done with as little struggle as possible. And so at the end of the day, you say, oh, well, I'm ready. I'd like to go for a walk. I want to connect. So how can you manage your workstation, your own physical alignment, how you sequence things during the day, so that there is more of you available, that you're not like throwing those tokens away on things that are optional? Like, why would you pay for struggles that you don't actually need to have on your plate?
And well, this is an excellent point because I'm very much interested to know because we get told you do your 150 minutes of exercise a week. A lot of us don't get it. I'm not somebody who gets it right now. But on the other hand, I've heard that if you do things throughout the day, just as you said, then that also helps as well. So can you please give us an example of what you mean?
Great. So first of all, I want to just underline again what I said at the beginning about friendly and supportive. So I
Yeah.
don't want you to be adding more tension. I don't want you to be getting into controlling and micromanaging yourself.
Mm.
This is not supposed to be more work. This is, if you and I were working on a project together in the same room, and if it was my house I was hosting, I might ask, do you have everything you need, to be comfortable to do your job? Occasionally I might say, I'm going to take a break. Did you want to join me in the kitchen for a snack and a conversation? Or if not, can I bring anything back for you? Right. So we want to have that kind of checking in with our physical self. Do you have everything you need? Would you like a change now? Would you like a break? Okay, so this one is really simple and so effective. So I love to share it first. Your muscles work in teams around joints. So your skeletal alignment is a big deal about whether or not your muscles are set up to work optimally in those teams. So if you can just sit forward in your chair or stand up so that your spine is able to move. And what we're going to do is a simple rotation of the arms. So if you rotate and have the palms of the hands face the wall behind you,
Yeah.
and then rotate and have the palms of the hands face forward.
Yes.
What you might notice is when the palms of the hands face the wall behind you, I think of it as like a cascade. You set something in motion. And if you don't resist, when the palms of the hands face the wall behind you, you'll probably notice your shoulders start coming forward, your head starts coming forward, you might get a little more slumpy.
Mm.
And if you approach your typing emails from here, or showing up for a Zoom call, or driving your car, you're already in a position of collapse. And
Yes.
now you're not breathing as well as you could. And your muscles are working harder. And to be honest, you don't look like an authoritative expert in your field. You kind of look old and sad and more like a beggar.
When you're slumped over.
Yep. If you simply rotate so the palms of the hands face forward, you might find the shoulders coming back right away and you're more upright.
Yes.
And that's not adding tension. We're just using a rotation of the upper arm. So the palms facing the wall behind you sets you up with a great posture for depression. So any request for activity is going to feel like a lot. So the palms face forward. I have a horizon. It's easy to look around. It's easy to shift my weight. I'm ready to go. And
Almost
so
like, so for people who are listening on audio, this is probably going to be one you want to watch on YouTube. But it's almost like I'm seeing standing on top of a mountain. You wouldn't have your palms faced behind you. You'd have your palms facing in front of you, like as if you're receiving all of it.
right. So there's a receptive quality that's nice and an openness. And you don't have to go all the way palms forward to get the change. Palms facing you is enough. So if you are standing and have palms face the wall behind you, it's kind of difficult to swing your arms like you're walking.
Yeah.
If you simply have palms facing you, now there's a lightness and an ease in swinging.
Facing, much more difficult to swing your arms. Palms facing your thighs, the outside of your thighs, that in like marching position is already easier. So if you turn your palms all outwards towards the outside, towards your front, then again, it feels different. It does feel different to do it.
Right. And so you can, so if you spend your workday at a keyboard, then you just take a moment, rotate palms forward, bend your elbows. Now your shoulders are set back and open, and then you turn over from the elbows and you type. And so a couple of times a day, you just refresh whenever you bring your hands up to the keyboard. Do I have a little external rotation there in the upper arm?
Yeah.
And if you're starting to feel tired, you just check in. Oh, I'm doing that internal rotation thing again. Let me just give a little reset. And it's not about pulling the shoulders back. If you put an internal rotation on the upper arm bone, you invite the shoulder blade to come forward. So now these guys are no longer optimal length, right? They're not in their neutral home position. And you put a spin this way on the collarbone, which pushes down on the sternum. So that's where I think of it as a cascade, right? It's like you push the first domino. And if you push the first domino in this direction, you get a collapse. And if you push this first domino in a little external rotation, you invite the scapula closer to the spine. You put a spin this way on the collarbone, giving a little lift to the sternum. And so without tension, you just start, oh, we're going in the direction of uprightness and openness. That will impact breathing, which is going to impact how clearly you think. That's going to impact your upright posture, which is going to impact how other people see you. Oh, you're actually showing up like you want to be here.
You're paying attention.
And so there's a big deal about that too. Sorry, dancing with skeleton. So your nervous system has 4 levels of activation, right? You get concerned about your safety, flight. You want to get out of here. You can't get out. Now you go into fight. You're not going to win a fight. So you go into freeze or fawn. And the 4th possibility is an engagement. And so engagement is where you'd like to be with your coworkers, with your clients, with your projects. There are emotions that go with these, right? Flight is more about fear. Get me out of here. Fight is more anger, rage. Freeze and fawn are more hopeless. I can't really do anything. And then you have this full spectrum of emotions: pleasure, creativity, playfulness, happiness. You'll have a bigger spectrum to your life, the more of it you spend in engagement. And we all are great at picking this up about other people, right? Because we are all descendants of a long line of ancestors who survived. And so, is somebody else here paying attention to me? Are they trying to get away? Are they trying to dominate the situation? Do they feel hopeless, right? Like, is this person a good asset for my team, or are they a liability?
Yeah.
We're always making those calculations. And because it mattered for millennia for our physical safety, we look to those physical cues a lot. So does somebody show up with a nice regular breathing pattern, with an upright posture, looking like they can move around and do things? Or are they hiding? Are they looking like they want to get out of here? Are they looking like they're trying to control everything? This is a way to take care of yourself in a friendly way, right? You're just putting a rotation on your arms, and now you're more upright, you're breathing better, it's easier for you to move around. It's also a way for you to communicate to other people that you're capable, you're competent.
You're self-assured. And
Yeah.
this is the thing, it's like I've been having a lot of conversations recently about the difference between humans and people. And people are people within society, versions of humans that have organized society that they have to live within. Whereas humans are simply one of the animals of the earth. And we've been, because of our society, our peopleization, we've convinced ourselves, or we've been convinced that we're so different from the rest of the kingdom. And it's like, yes, we do have differences, but we do have standard biological functions, things that are in our core that mean that we are afraid by certain things and not afraid by others, things that convince us to be confident of things. Like the whole thing about when you yawn and other people yawn as well, because it's catching, it makes everybody feel more relaxed. In our core, right back into the coding, we know we can be relaxed now because we've seen somebody else yawn. People don't yawn when they're terrified,
Yes.
you know?
And another aspect of that, people, I love that distinction, people and human. I think that there is a people idea that there is one best anything, but especially one best sitting posture, standing posture, anything like that. There is some external ideal, and it is your job to match that ideal. From a human perspective, any good sitting posture is going to be too much after about 10 to 15 minutes. Some of your muscles will fatigue. And if you change, you can hand over to a set of muscles that are not tired, and now they're fresh and you're working. And if you stay in that one correct posture, some of the muscles are fatigued. They hand over now to somebody who's not ideally suited to doing this job. And you just start getting into collapse and strain. And so what you really would like is to have 3 or 4 good options at least, and then you just rotate among them.
We have children that are sitting in school chairs for hours and hours and hours a day, just teaching them how to be at a desk forever,
Right.
because the general, this is a good job, is at a desk,
Right.
says
And then
society.
we have little children who like to wiggle and who know, right? I mean, if you take a toddler and put them into a chair that's uncomfortable for them, they'll just scream. They won't put up with it. They get a little older, we make them sit still in uncomfortable chairs. And then when they get to be teenagers, we lament that they don't move around enough.
Amazing. It's just like, we raise them to be people and then are annoyed that they're people and not more human. When the examples that we're giving them of how to be human, we don't give them any. So the people that say, oh, kids don't go out and run around and kick a ball are usually the adults that don't run around and kick a ball.
And probably the adults that said, oh, they don't need recess at school anymore. There's so much material for them to cover. So let's take away the option for them to do that.
Your body doesn't matter. It's all about your brain. And that's just not true.
Well,
Do
okay,
you
but
have another?
also,
Oh, yeah, please.
also, if we go to the animal kingdom, the beings that have brains like ours all move around. You can say there is a consciousness in trees and flowers, and that's fine. I'm totally with you, but they don't have a brain in the way that we. The beings that have brains move. And so our brain function and health is really closely tied to movement. And moving is part of the way that you keep that cognitive function. So there are scientists that are doing great research on dementia and movement and exercise and all that, which is wonderful. There's also, if we just go to the animal kingdom, there is a being called a sea squirt that spends its juvenile life as an animal swimming around. It has a little spinal cord. It has a little rudimentary brain for identifying water currents and temperature and sunlight. And then when it picks the perfect spot, right, the one perfect spot to spend the rest of its life, it affixes itself to the rock in that place and dissolves its brain and then spends its adult life as a plant. And so if you're looking at, okay, I know the body stuff is nice, but I don't have time for it. I just need to think through these problems. I need to get the work done. And you're going to have more of a functioning brain to do that if you're actually moving around, because that movement is going to be the signal to your nervous system that you need to be investing in your brain. Like, we are a creature that moves, and therefore we need a brain to help us make decisions and choices about how we move, where we move, what we do.
I so want to go off in that direction, but I'm trying to tame myself. Makes me want to go. I know you had another practical tip for us.
Along the lines of working with yourself and not just making more work. Because, okay, so if we could just go back to the beginning where you said, you see a lot of posts and ads about getting your nails done in spas. Well, somebody's making money off of all those, which is why you're seeing all of those, right? Because, okay, that's fine, it's part of the economy. And then there also are the gyms and the trainers that say, well, what you need to do is carve another 20, 30 minutes out of every day, or an hour out of every week, where what you're doing is this, which, okay, if you have it, and if you want to spend it that way. So I taught at a language immersion summer camp years and years ago for Chinese language. And what was interesting is the population at camp, the staff was white Americans and Chinese immigrants. And so it was hot summer. We were outside being active. And so what the white Americans did was take their sweaty clothes and put them in a laundry bag. And then every 2 weeks or so, when we had time to go into town, we would have a day at the laundromat. And what the Chinese people did, made a big impression on me, was they would hand wash 1 or 2 articles of clothing every day and hang them up. And then when we had a day off, they had a day off. They could go for a walk. They could go into town empty-handed. They could wander around. They didn't have to be back and forth to the laundromat. They didn't have to watch their watch. They just had a day that was free. And so if you can integrate some of these things about posture and movement in your workday, then when you have a day off, you might want to go to the gym. You might want to go on a hike. You might want to watch a movie with a friend. You could have taken care of some of the self-care during your days.
Little and often.
There are some strengthening things that you could be doing at your desk, but what I'd like to show you now, because so many folks are in this kind of binary trap of strength, flexibility, or they might kind of go 3: strength, flexibility, cardio. Your muscle, so I was a literature major before I got into movement. I think of some of these muscles as characters, right, who have their own motivation and sense of mission. If you have spent a lot of time with your upper arms internally rotated, your shoulders forward in this kind of posture, these pectoralis muscles might have concluded that that is their job. Their mission is to keep the upper arm close to the sternum. Now you go in and try to stretch, and you got a fight on your hands because you're asking it to fail in its mission. Instead of slumping all day and then going to the gym and having a fight, what if we did a reset? So here, try this. We're gonna do 2 things on one side and then compare. So if you just move one shoulder a little bit,
and then rolling the other shoulder for our audio listeners,
and then just turn your head right and left, and don't go pushing the boundaries. Just notice, how far do you turn? How easy is it? And then come on back to the middle, tilt one ear closer to that shoulder, tilt to the other side. What is your tilting like? Are you fairly symmetrical, right side, left side?
I am not symmetrical. Just
notice what the difference is, because then if we get a change on one side, it'd be nice if you could say, oh yeah, that was a change. Instead, well, I didn't really know what it was like before. I'm going to give you some directions and show you how to follow them. And then I'm going to wave my arms around and talk, but you're going to need to do it for 1 minute. So I'll set a timer.
Okay.
So if you take one hand and put that hand on the ribs on the other side.
Yes.
And bring the other hand across and pull that elbow just a little bit into the middle, right? So for me, I've taken my right hand, put it on the left side of my ribs. My left hand is pulling the right elbow toward the middle, And then that means that the front of my right shoulder is a little bit shorter, right? I'm pulling that towards the middle in front. Okay, now your job is to just stay in this position for 60 seconds. I've set a timer, so I'll give you an honest time and we'll come back. Here's why. If you have a muscle that is tight, you might think that you need to stretch it. But if you stretch a tight muscle, you make it even longer and even tighter, right? And so if you take a tight muscle and bring the end points of the muscle closer to each other, now you slacken the muscle, you make it softer. And if you hold a muscle in a slack position for 60 seconds, you give a reset to the spindle cells in the muscle and it gets ready for a new idea. And if you think in terms of characters, you're now helping this muscle succeed in its mission. Oh, your job is to bring the upper arm closer to the sternum. Let me help with that.
Its original mission, not the one that we trained it to be, more humanless person.
And now the muscle can have the experience of, oh, mission accomplished, and I don't have to do it all on my own.
Yeah.
And now the muscle can take a break. So we're at our 60 seconds. Go ahead and release that arm and just see.
It does feel more loose. And that one was the more loose shoulder in the first place, but it feels even more loose.
The more loose. But can you see that that shoulder is sitting lower?
I can.
So before we do the other side, we're going to bring in another idea. Let's say that we gave this muscle a reset, right? Like pushing the reset button. And now we're going to say, I have a new idea for you. Why don't you get longer? So the pectoralis is triangle shape. We've got a point here at the upper shoulder, a point at the top of the sternum, a point midway down the sternum. We're going to come to the middle of that triangle and just lightly say, why don't you get longer?
We're talking to our bodies now.
I'm putting my two hands on the front of my right shoulder, and then I'm pulling my right hand toward the top of the right shoulder, and I'm pulling my left hand toward the sternum. And then I come off, break contact, and come back in again. Now, if two hands is a problem for you, you can use one hand, thumb and fingers together, and you just indicate get longer. This is gentle. This is not deep tissue, right? This is like petting a cat. You're not digging in. You're just giving an indication. You can also go vertically in that triangle because the pec minor muscles run vertically underneath. So you can say get longer here.
To the same pressure for those that are listening. To the same pressure, let's say you're in a crowded room and you touch somebody's back lightly to say, oh, excuse me for a second as I walk past you. It's that. It's a very slight instruction.
Just an indication. We're going to do a little bit more on this side. Make a little beak out of your hand so your thumb and fingertips are together. You'll come to the side of the neck, that same side you've been working on. Start with the fingers together and just pull them apart and then come off and start in the middle on the side of the neck, pull the fingers apart and come away. Just inviting that side of the neck to get longer.
Okay.
And then we'll do one more. Sternocleidomastoid makes a connection between the skull behind the ear and the top of the sternum. So we're going to start in the middle and invite those muscles to get longer. If you've had a head forward posture, these guys get short. So we're just going to say you could get longer.
And that's something a lot of people are suffering with, regardless if they've looked themselves in the mirror recently, that tech neck is what people are calling it now, where you're just your neck is just too much forward from your body because your head bent down looking at your phone.
You could get longer. Okay, so then let that go. Bring your hands down and just check in, right? If you move that shoulder on the side you worked with up and down, forward and back, and then move the other shoulder, do you feel a difference?
My left shoulder was already more loose than my right shoulder, but it does feel more loose than it was before.
And then if you tilt your head side to side,
more room. It feels like there's more room. It's my body.
And then what about turning?
I can move my head slightly further to the left. So again, where I've made more room on that side.
Right. So this is the kind of thing you could be watching a video. You could be on a Zoom call, slackening a muscle. You could be reading something, giving a little indication to your muscles that they could I think of these cues a little bit like a sports team, right? Okay, huddle up. You're going to go short. I want you two to go long. I've shown you 3 things about lengthening muscles because we're looking at the front where things are too short. But you could equally invite a muscle to get shorter, for example, in the upper back. If you're short in the front, to be long in the back. So, okay, you're going to go short. I want you to go long. You two will go short. And I just want to give this spin to it for any musicians in the audience. If you have a string instrument that is out of tune, some strings too short, others too long, it doesn't matter how hard you try to play, how many hours you practice, how good your teacher, the quality of the instrument. An out of tune instrument is out of tune. It's hard work to tune it up, but you need to address that if you are working in a way that makes you out of tune, and then you get up and go to the gym, but you don't reset the tuning, you're just going to be vulnerable to injury and probably strengthening those patterns. So doing a little bit of slackening and muscle length cues. Okay, now I'm in tune. Now I go for a walk. Now I play ball with my kids. Now I go to the gym. And my muscles are available to work harmoniously in teams. They're not all lopsided and not working properly around the joints. When we think about the quality of your work during the day, when the muscles have 3 possible lengths in relation to their teammates around a joint: too short, too long, or just right. Too short and too long muscles will all be tight. That is impacting your blood circulation, lymph flow. You've got pressure on nerves. All that's going to be a distraction from whatever project that you're working on. And it's not going to help with bringing fresh oxygen-rich blood to your brain. It's not going to help with your breathing. None of that is supporting you having a good workday or being ready to go play when you're out of work.
Because you're a whole human. And honestly, because I've been doing the right side as you were speaking, I did the left side first. And I don't think I realized before starting our conversation today just how tight my right neck was. I might have stretched my neck, but I wouldn't have acknowledged it more than the usual 2 shoulder arm roll that you'll end up doing in the morning.
Right. And this just strikes me as such a more friendly and supportive way of going in. Instead of saying, oh, you're too far forward, you bug me, I want you to be back further. You go in and say, oh, you've been going forward. Let me help you do that a little more successfully. What about a new idea now? How would you like to do this? You could go longer. I could get some of these other teammates to go longer and help you out.
That is so great. Did you have one more practical tip?
I have one more that I'd like to do, and that is related to equipment. So many of the keyboards that come with our desktops are set up with those little flaps in the back so that you are encouraged to angle the keyboard this way. Let's try this. Take your arms down to your sides, bend at the wrists so the palms of your hands face the floor and you get kind of a right angle at your wrist.
Yes. So the back of your hands is facing the ceiling.
Yeah. And when you do that, what happens to your neck and shoulders?
It kind of hunches up a little bit, and
you get tension in that your wrists are bent, so the palms of the hands face the floor, top of the hands face the ceiling. Just turn your head a little bit, right and left, look up and down. How available are you to the environment?
Not much. There is a limitation there.
Okay, now get long in the back of the wrist so the fingertips point down to the floor, have the palms facing your own legs. How's your neck now?
I do have so much more room.
When you set up your keyboard so that it angles up at the back, you're going to be typing with that bend in the wrist.
I don't know why they have that either. Who said that was ergonomically correct?
I don't know. So now especially, so you approach your desk, your palms are facing the wall behind you, you're already internally rotated, you bend at the wrists. How are you not going home with a neck tension headache? Take that wrist rest and shove it under the front of your keyboard. You want the keyboard in close enough so your elbow is alongside you, and then you want a downward slope from your elbow to the fingertips. You don't want to break it in the middle.
Which that would go against a lot of the standard ergonomic advice that you get, occupational health, when you're in the office. I know a lot of people are at home, but a lot of people have been told to get back to the office now because everything is supposed to be exactly aligned. But you still have the keyboard that goes up at the end, which doesn't make sense.
People might tell you this is the great setup for your keyboard, but I just would ask you as a human to check in with your own tissues. When you bend your wrists that way, what cascade do you set in motion? What happens downstream of your wrists being in that shape? I think you'll find that your shoulders hunch and your head comes forward. This is a bad idea.
A lot of keyboards are completely straight and horizontal, which your hands don't come into position like that, especially if you have a wider top. So I've got broad shoulders. So you have to put your arms in at an angle and then straighten out your hands to be able to type. And that's why I have a keyboard like yours that's curved, that's ergonomic, because it spreads out at an angle.
This does not have to be a huge investment. I'm in the States. I spent $40 on this one a couple of years ago. It doesn't have to be a break the bank kind of thing. And for those people that are working at home or at hot desks, there's no ergonomic way to type at a laptop. You either have the laptop up where the screen is a good height for your neck and your eyes, and then you're typing up here, or you put it on your lap, which you think you should do because that's what it's called, in which case the screen is too low and now you're getting into that head down situation
completely
again.
Curved.
And so an external keyboard is a small investment. I use, like, I'll sit on the sofa and I'll put the laptop up on the back of the sofa and I put my feet up and I put the keyboard on my lap and now I can type there. No, it's not the perfect ideal work condition, but it's a nice option to use for a little while, and I don't have to be stressing out my neck and shoulders. I don't ever do a full day like that, but I'm at a standing desk right now. I can stand for a little while and then I can go sit on the sofa, and then I can take the standing desk down and sit at my desk so that I can rotate around and I can be in friendly shapes that allow my muscles to work well in each of those options.
This is great because even as you were talking, I went to put my hand on my mouse because that's where I usually just rest my hand when I'm having a conversation. I lean because I'm putting my hand on my mouse because I've got, even though I'm standing, I've got it aligned so that it's aligned with my elbow. But if it's aligned with my elbow, when I put my hand on my mouse, it's too high. So I end up shifting my whole body. So I've got a curvy mouse like that and still I'm moving. So I probably should have my desk lower down and my monitors raised up so that there's more room between my body so that I can lean down. My arms can go downwards when it's typing or when it's using the mouse, but I can still have the screens much more higher in front of my face.
And as long as we're talking equipment too, one thing I've really enjoyed is a vertical mouse. So now my wrist is more in this shape and I'm not so tempted to get into.
That's helped a lot because I have funky wrists. So I end up wearing wrist guards for a few months until it calms down again. So this has been incredibly helpful.
What you really want for typing for the mouse, anything, is you want to be thinking about the fingers, the wrists, all these little bones and muscles as more like antenna. And then the big movements from the shoulder. If resting your wrist for your keyboard or your mouse, that's where you get into carpal tunnel troubles because you're not moving from the shoulder. You're making everything happen down here. You get
digitally right at the end.
Right. So you want the big muscles of the upper back, putting the hands into position, and then those little sensitive antenna fingertips making contact with support from the big muscles of the upper back.
If you're a musician, you know that there's different body parts that play a part depending on what instrument you're playing. And if you play sports, you know that when you're kicking a ball, if you're playing football, it's not just your foot that does it.
Right.
This is amazing. And lastly, how did you get to know all of these things?
So I started out as a literature major and I was interested in music and dance. And then I was in a vehicle accident and I had 10 years of low back and neck pain. And I made the rounds of health professionals and I still hurt all the time. So I had my own journey with chronic pain. I woke up every day in pain. Usually I felt better by the end of the day after moving around all day. And so then I felt the worst first thing in the morning when I woke up. So it was hard to go to bed because I knew I'd feel worse a few hours later. It was learning these things that brought me out of pain completely, so I don't hurt anymore. I had the low back and neck pain, but also if I walked very far, my left knee would hurt. If I used the computer mouse too long, my right shoulder would hurt. Now I am older and carrying more weight than I was then. And I can walk as long as I like, and I can work as long as I like, and I wake up comfortable and I go about my days comfortable. I had to learn it for me. And then because I'd hurt so long, I set the intention, well, if I have to go through this, I want to come out of it able to be useful to other people. So when I came out of pain, I went off to teacher training. And then I was a yoga teacher because yoga was one of the things that had helped me so very much. And then I was driving home from the yoga studio, right? Life was good. I was out of pain. I was helping people. I was waiting to make a turn at an intersection. And I watched an older woman walk across the street, and she got up on the sidewalk and she tripped and fell. So I parked and I went over and sat down next to her. And it was the second time in a week that she'd fallen just going out for a walk around the neighborhood. And I realized, oh, even when I was in a lot of pain, I could still trust my own coordination and balance to move around the world and do things that I wanted to do, was able to do. So I got very interested in, well, what are the common changes that go along with aging? Balance issues, incontinence issues, some of the joint changes. And what do we know? Who's been doing work that will help people reverse out of those or prevent them? Lately, I've been realizing how many of those troubles hit neurodivergent people so much earlier in life because they've got things like hypermobility, or they've got sort of heightened sensory awareness so that threat detection is more alert, so that ramping the nervous system down throughout the day is more important. And so I'm looking at, well, how can I take what I learned to help me, to help older people, to make this group of especially neurodivergent professionals just better able to attend to self-care through their days so that they can be productive and focused at work, connect with their coworkers and clients and get things done, and also maybe have some tokens, some spoons left after work on the weekends that they could have a hobby or go somewhere interesting or connect with friends and family.
Be more human and having a more full, rounded life.
Have a better quality human life, absolutely.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today and your great examples. So everybody who's listening and watching, you can find Paula on LinkedIn, Paula James Flows. The links are going to be in the show notes, including some free resources. So do make sure you go and check those out. Let us know in the comments. Let us know what one of her tips worked the best for you. Have you tried any of those things before? What happened if you just tried it for the first time now? And did you feel your shoulders loosen up? Because I know mine did. So thank you so much, Paula, and thank you, audience, for joining us today. And I hope these exercises and the awareness of our bodies and how that supports our brains, our careers, our lives as humans, I hope all of this has helped you today. So thank you so much. And I will be speaking to you next week, but I do want to talk to you in the comments as well. So speak to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please look at the list of other episodes. I'm sure there's another one that can help you. See you next time.